Rolled in.
Maybe you could.
A little bit, but I'm not, it's not anymore. I think it's here.
No, I don't need this.
Yeah. Well, I was up at Platinum where, you know. Wow, my kids had.
Yeah, blame it on your kids.
That's
always great.
well, it's coming from LA.
Yeah. That's right. We have so many options to choose from. That's what's nice about having a team. I also did take that.
Stellar.
Thank you. Ready to go? How are you?
Good, James. How are you?
I don't know if everyone seems to be on that side of the room. Are you okay being on by yourself over there?
You know, I'm kind of a right side kind of guy. So.
Okay. All right.
I did shower today.
Okay. Depends what you have to say.
Yeah.
All right, you ready? Ready? All right. This meeting of the Livingston City Commission is called to order. May we have roll call, please?
Chairman Bennett.
I'm present.
Commissioner Holden.
Here.
Commissioner Frieden.
Present.
Commissioner Schwartz.
Present.
And Commissioner Sandberg.
Present.
All right, we'll now have a moment of silence. Thank you very much, Ms. Wright, for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. First order of business are our consent items, and I'm wondering if there's any objection from the commission that I can ask one question of the administration before making a motion. Is that all right? I noticed it in our consent items in our claims. And I appreciate it that you've marked claims that have been overspent expenditures. Is there anything on there that we need to be concerned about or aware of in regards to those overspent expenditures?
Now, the ones that are marked overspent expenditures are usually single line items, so they're not necessarily spent the year's budget, they're just very small items that have been exceeded. There's nothing that indicates a systemic problem or anything that's a problem with the funds themselves, just big line items.
Okay. Thank you very much. So is there a motion from the commission on the consent items?
Yeah, make a motion with test consent items A, B, C.
I'll second.
Well, there's a motion by Commissioner Friedman, a second by Commissioner Hoagland. May we have roll call, please?
Chairperson Bennett,
Yes.
Commissioner Hoagland,
Yes.
Commissioner Friedman.
Yes.
Commissioner Schwartz,
Four.
Commissioner Sandberg.
The motion passes. Tonight, we do not have any proclamations, but we do have one scheduled public comment. Kristen from the Park County Trust Transit representative regarding public transit project. Kristen. Oh, and two others.
Kristen Galbraith and Nancy Garrett and Steve J, who is your wonderful GIS IT for City of Livingston and Park County.
Okay. Thank you very much.
They're part of the committee that's
Okay.
making some of these transit decisions.
Now, Kristen, could we get that microphone, whoever's going to speak, can we get the microphone really close to you so those in the back can hear as well? And is that going to work? Do we need to pull it up at all? Good? Can you hear me, Kristen, in the back? Okay.
So anyway, we as a committee have been meeting for about 18 months. Commissioner Schwartz is on our committee. We have applied for grant funding for the operating and capital grant funds for a new bus, as well as to cover expenses of that transit system. And we have worked with several businesses in town and organizations to meet our match, which we've done so far. So I sent an information package, which kind of talks about, I won't go into the details too much, but we have received award contracts from MDT Transit for the operating portion. We've received a letter for the capital assistance grant. I was informed last week that we will not receive that bus until March. And that's just because of the ordering process that MDT has to go through. But one of the managers that was there from Flathead County, they can lease us a bus for 7 cents a mile. It's the Glacier National Park Sprinter buses. So that's likely what we'll do for the first 6 months of the program. Brand new buses, but they don't use them in the winter in glaciers. So. We have our job descriptions out. They are posted. We have 2 drivers that we'll be advertising for and 1 half-time transit coordinator. The tentative date for the fixed route services is going to be mid-October, based on if we can get that lease bus here. We have been working with Livingston School District. We were hoping to get some weekend transfer to Bridger Bowl. Bridger was going to support us with $10,000, but the school districts didn't feel that they could provide the drivers on the weekends for the buses. So we're going to kind of let that lie for a little bit and then revisit it in some due time. We have gone through the fixed route system. We've taken rides with David Eaton on the counterpoint bus. Steve J has helped quite a bit with the routing, the times, that kind of thing. So what you see, and Heidi can, okay. So those are the new maps based on my manager meeting last week. There will be 1 fixed route running 6 times a day, Monday through Friday, free service to any citizens that are trying to get from any of those points that you see on the map. And the one thing that we really wanted to bring up at this meeting, so we could have it scheduled as an action item for the next city meeting, is we really need a striped area for one of the bus stops in the downtown area. And we gave, I think I did not write it correctly on this form, but we only need 1 area striped. And then we had 2 different options, or 2 areas striped. And then the second one would be one of the two options, unless Shannon Holmes had, or anybody else with the city had some ideas on where that might best fit. We talked to Angel Line representatives, and they aren't interested in our bus, the Windrider, stopping at their bus area. That's a separate program. And so we are just here to answer some questions and talk about if we can maybe get that bus lane striped at any time in the near future to make it easier for our passengers to get on and off.
Right, so just want to clarify, so what you're requesting this evening is to get on the agenda so that we can discuss an ordinance to get that area striped for your parking.
Two areas.
The two areas. And second of all, are you also looking for the money for your funding?
You guys already committed that money, and so you have probably an invoice in your inbox.
Mine?
Maybe yours, maybe Pages.
Well, if it's in my inbox, I'll pass it along.
Perfect.
Actually, you'll find it in the claims.
Today's claim.
Today's claims.
Okay, great. Well, the claim's already passed, so
Correct.
checks in the mail. If you don't see it in 3 weeks, contact the administration. So basically, it's just the one item then.
For
Or
two areas.
one item for two areas. Okay.
But we are very interested in what Shannon might have to say about those areas based on the traffic downtown. The stops are mainly based on community partnerships. Most of the stops are at places that are, given funding for this program. So we can't change it too much, but we definitely can be in those areas within a few blocks.
Well, here's a suggestion, unless there's some objection from the commission. Direct the administration to bring back a ordinance change based on conversations with the Public Works Director and anyone else who might have some input as far as appropriate places to park, and work with the Windrider Committee to establish those so that next meeting we have a ordinance that we can review and discuss. Does that sound appropriate?
Sounds good.
Okay. So that is the direction. Administration. Windrider Committee, anyone in the city administration that needs to weigh in on the decision and provide us 2 spots that the transportation committee can have for parking the vehicles in the downtown area. And preferably, you might identify 3 areas for 2 stops. So I'm assuming that those are ideal for what you have, for your needs. And I guess we're looking at if there's any objection from the administration to
And
do
they're
that, and to the striking of that as well.
Basically based also on the direction the bus is heading. We're trying to avoid making left-hand turns through traffic, trying to just keep it easiest for the bus drivers to get through those locations. So that's why they were placed in the areas that you see proposed.
Perfect. Have you had a chance to talk with the administration or Public Works at this point? Up to this point? No.
Basically, what we did is we identified 3 areas that are either loading zones already that we just like to. It's basically, it's a stop. What are we looking at? 2-3 minutes stops, 2 minutes stops, or something like that. So, yeah, we're not looking for, but when we pull up, we want it open and it enforced, So that's the thing.
Any other clarifications, questions at all? Mr. Hoagland?
You had mentioned that it's for citizens. Is there some kind of pass or anything like that? Because say someone gets off the bus and needs a ride into town. What is it?
Actually, it's for anyone that wants to use the system because it is a free service. So one of the stops is out by McDonald's, so Super 8 guests could get on there if they wanted to jump on and come downtown. There's a big stop at the hospital, so people that are using the hospital can get back into Livingston. So definitely citizens and visitors.
Any other questions from the commission? What you just said kind of brought up another one for me, which is if you're going to get these stops, and maybe, for instance, use the example of like the Super 8, someone there might want to go into downtown or something along those lines. Are you going to provide information, like brochure or something, at those places so that they'll have this information so they can go there? Okay.
Yeah, and we also hope eventually down the road to get some more information put at the bus stops. So that'll talk a little bit about the route and the timing and and have a map, all of that. But yeah, we'll have brochures and get those schedules out to everybody where the bus will be stopping.
Right. The only other question comes up in my mind is that since areas are designated loading areas, are we looking for like that those particular areas are suggested to only be for your buses to stop? Because if you're only going to be there 2 or 3 minutes several times a day, I guess you have to work that out with the administration. I don't know what the requirements will be on that signage. This is only for this at these times.
That's
And then, so I'll let you guys figure that out. Okay. Any other questions, clarification? Well, thank you very much. It's a lot of hard work you put into this. Way to go.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Yeah. So thanks a lot for putting that all together.
Yeah.
You're smiling, so you must have a lot of fun doing this.
We do.
All right. That's good. Okay, so tonight there are no public hearings or ordinances. However, we have several resolutions to discuss tonight. The first resolution is resolution number 4754, a resolution of the City Commission of the City of Livingston, Montana, of its intent to fix the tax levy for fiscal year 2017-2018 and giving notice of a public hearing thereon. Mr. Carlos.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Previously, we had passed the initial mill levy estimate when we did the initial budget. We're waiting for the final numbers to come in from the state. Those have come in, so now we're able to provide you with the actual mill levy numbers, the values of the mills and the mills that we are allowed to levy. To make it a little easier to understand, in the packet, we had included the verbiage in the resolution itself, and then the spreadsheet located there was the initial spreadsheet, so you can compare. Tonight, I also included in your stations a spreadsheet that encapsulates the information that's in the resolution itself. So it's the new information with the new mill levies available and the value of the mill levies. Additionally, in the back of that small packet, there is the state worksheet for how those values are determined. If you really want to dig into it and you have a lot of extra free time, is there for you. But the basic overview for tonight is that the mill levy situation has changed a little bit in that the value has increased from 10,986 to 11,622 per mill. However, the number of mills available for us to levy has decreased from 197.54 to 185.5. When you do all the math on that, it comes out to a reduction of around $38,000 in the general fund. Additionally, there's one other change that made that. If you look on line 2 under the comprehensive liability insurance, to cover the increase in rates, we had to assign 2 mills to that versus 1. So there was a change there as well. But with that change, the overall reduction was about $38,000 in the general fund. However, due to the way the state calculates it, there's also some additional funds coming in on the front page of the actual state worksheet. Line 19, which is assessed value for newly taxable property, which is about $48,000 to $49,000. Spread out over the current mills, that comes out to about $38,000 in the general fund. So it's basically a net wash. However, this is the final numbers from the state, and this will be what will be used as we prepare the final budget for the next meeting. Right.
All right, is there any questions, clarification, comments from the commission at all? Mr. Sandberg?
So what's the proposed reduction in the general fund of $38,000?
No, the general fund will be offset by the additional assessed value, so it's a net wash in the general fund. It's within $200.
Okay,
It's just the extra money comes from the additional assessed value, so it's not in the levies themselves. It's an additional amount that'll come in from new property taxes.
okay.
Yeah, it
That's
doesn't.
that ad valorem
Yes, that's at line 19 on the front page of that worksheet.
situation.
For some reason, the state doesn't include that in the current mill values, so that is additional and above the mill values, and that will make up almost to the penny what the reduction was in the general fund.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the commission at all? Is there any public comment? Any public comment on resolution 4754? All right. Is there a motion from the commission on resolution 4754?
I make a motion we pass resolution 4754.
I'll second.
So that's a motion by Commissioner Friedman, a second by Commissioner Schwartz. Final discussion? Questions? All right, then we have roll call, please.
Chairperson Bennett,
Yes.
Commissioner Hopper,
Yes.
Commissioner Freeman.
Yes.
Commissioner Schwartz,
Four.
Commissioner Sandberg,
Against.
Motion passes. Our next resolution is resolution number 4753, a resolution of the City Commission of the City of Livingston, Montana, authorizing the city manager to submit a TSEP planning grant application with the Montana Department of Commerce to procure engineering services for the completion of a PER, preliminary engineering report encompassing the sewer and stormwater system. Mr. Pardus.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This resolution authorizes me to sign an agreement to procure engineering services for completion of the sewer and stormwater drainage system. This is a continuation of the PER that we've done for the water system. It's a long-term project to try and determine any choke points, the order of repairs and or replacements that we need to do in the utility system writ large. So you're looking at the whole system versus individual portions as they break or repairs can be necessary. This particular TSEP grant is a matching grant, so the city's portion of that would be $15,000. That currently isn't in the budget, but it is available within the stormwater and wastewater funds to be used in the reserves of those funds. So we take the reserves of those funds of $15,000 to match this grant and be able to complete that planning project.
Great, thank you very much. Are there any questions, clarifications from the commission? Commissioner Sandberg.
So is this basically a study of the system
It's basically a study and a mapping of the system.
and of the entire city?
Yes.
Okay. And again, has this been something that we've been talking about, or is this, I don't recollect, I haven't been here very long, but I don't recollect any conversations about it at our meeting. So how long have we been discussing this project?
We actually did this for the water system. Shannon, when was that completed? for the water?
2014.
Yeah, so 2014. It's been an ongoing project. We've been trying to get it as available At this point, especially with the current expansion we're having, we want to make sure that we understand all the limitations of the current system. So it's just a continuation of a pretty long-term project of mapping and understanding the utility systems in total.
So we didn't do that before we did it with our new facility. We didn't study our current situation before we decided to do the new facility.
We have the current, this is a more detailed, I mean, we have the basic outlay of the sewer system, if we're talking sewer specifically. And we have pretty good ideas, but this also includes mapping with GIS and actually having excellent locations on where everything is. So it's just a more detailed system, and also ties it in with the rest of the utilities to make sure we're looking at it in total, not just in and of itself.
So what are we expecting to do with this information once we receive it?
Initially will be to make sure that there's no impending failures in the system. So if there's anything that we didn't know of or anything that we didn't see before, it'll give us those, I'd say, critical problems that need to be addressed immediately. Otherwise, it will be used basically in the CIP and the budgeting process to look at where do we need to improve capacity. Sewer system is probably a good example. While we will have the new plant coming online, there still need to make sure that the distribution system itself can bring all that waste to the plant. So we'll be looking at any choke points, the most strategic places to increase the size of the sewer system itself, or if there's any places where the sewer system needs to be replaced due to age or current problems.
Totally understand. Just really concerned and don't understand why this was not the first step in our process of requesting the sewer and our wastewater facility. I mean, you put a new facility in there and then you do a study and you find some errors somewhere. It's a little late to, perhaps could be late to being able to make some corrections. So I'm just confused on the timing. I guess it is what it is, but it doesn't make sense to me. And then again, once we have that information and we do find some challenges that we need to take care of, you know, I just think of the funding components that perhaps maybe needed to do that, and looking at the bigger picture of what we're going to unravel once we start looking into it. And again, why that wasn't unraveled before we started. But that's just my opinion.
One advantage to the study is it will actually allow us to look at projects that need to be completed based on additional development, which will go into a impact fee study or possibly a special improvement district. So as we build developments in certain areas, if we know they're going to impact the system in a way, even if it isn't in their local neighborhood, we can then pass those fees on to the developers. So it's actually part of the funding mechanism to make sure we can do the system.
So as with the two developments that we're looking at today, we basically have no study that says, I mean, theoretically, because we ask these questions all the time, we're being told, of course, we can facilitate this, but in reality, we really don't have a study that says that. We're just making an assumption. And we may find out with the study that we made that assumption.
We have a set of information. This will give us a better set of information. So we may find out that we were mistaken in some places, but right now we're making decisions off the information we have and trying to get better information and make better decisions in the future.
Thank you.
Is there any other commission questions and clarification? Commissioner Oakland?
So I was going to ask you, like, how do we use this information? I think you explained that. Then secondly, when will this mapping be completed, and how related, I guess, to the project start is it? As to when it will be completed, this
To which project? This project?
to the sewer plant itself.
As far as the water reclamation facility goes, they're not directly linked projects. The water reclamation facility can definitely handle the current load, so there's no problem as far as that goes. And it's more of a, because we're increasing the capacity of the reclamation facility, we need to make sure that if we increase the capacity by a certain amount, that the system itself can handle it. So this is just, tonight we're just talking about applying for the grant itself. We have to go through the grant process, actually find out if we got the grant money. If we did, then we'd have to go out and find the engineering firm to be able to complete the work. And then I think, how long did the water study take, Shannon?
About 5 months.
So it's probably a 5 to 8 month process, depending on how much they have to get into.
So we aren't doing the actual mapping. We will hire someone else. to
Yeah,
do
there
that.
will actually be an engineering firm that will do the study for us.
So like our little camera that we use isn't an effective thing as far as this mapping.
Not to map the entire system, correct?
All right, thanks, that's all.
The other commissioner, Commissioner Schwartz.
Now, this doesn't necessarily tie in with, you know, upgrading our sewage treatment plant. We were kind of under the gun. Didn't we have a certain time period to bring ours up to standards? So it really, regardless if this study was done before or after its treatment plant had to get done.
Absolutely. There's two issues. There's capacity, and
Right.
the old plant had a capacity problem, but it's still able to
For
handle
what
the current
we have,
capacity.
currently have, yeah.
But the discharge quality that we needed to meet for the state was the second. And really,
Mitigating factor for
it was the
us
driving
doing it.
factor.
Yeah, okay. Just want to clarify on that point. Maybe we're working backwards, but we had to do the wastewater treatment. Thank you.
Any other commissioners have any, just a clarification? Commissioner Sandberg?
I guess I would just point out with Commissioner Schwartz's comments that when you're gonna do a new water reclamation facility that your sewer's dumping into, you would think that you would look at your sewer system first. I understand the timing. The timing is nothing new. We've known about it for a long time. And I think it's an error that that was not done. At the same time, we looked at the whole facility. So again, just my opinion.
Is there any public comment? Any public comment on resolution 4753? Public comment on resolution 4753. All right. Is there a motion from the commission on resolution 4753?
I'll make a motion to accept resolution 4753.
I'll second.
So motion by Commissioner Schwartz, second by Commissioner Hoagland. Roll call, please.
Chairperson Bennett,
Yes.
Commissioner Hopland,
Yes.
Commissioner Friedman.
Yes.
Commissioner Schwartz,
Or
Commissioner Sandberg.
Motion passes. The next resolution is resolution number 4756, a resolution of the City Commission of the City of Livingston, Montana, amending the memorandum of understanding with the Green Acres Homeowners Association with the City of Livingston's water main serving the Brookstone subdivision. Mr. Cardis?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is the project for you last commission meeting for your approval. However, there were some changes we decided that would be prudent to make in this, so we brought it before you again to make those changes. To a quick outline of the changes made to the memorandum of understanding itself. In both the first and the second paragraph, we further defined the city's maintenance responsibilities to end with the valves. That was implied, but we wanted to explicitly state it in the document that we are not accepting the maintenance responsibility for the entire Green Acres system, and that our maintenance responsibilities will end at the valve. And then in paragraph 4, there was an update to accommodate Green Acres. We had not given the actual location of the valves that we say may be required by the city. So this paragraph now outlines exactly where those valves will be placed and exactly what size they will be. So it just clarified a couple of points. It didn't change any of the actual meat of the agreement, but did clarify our maintenance responsibilities and exactly where we would expect valves to be placed in the future.
Okay. Are there any points of clarification or questions from the commission on resolution 4756? Is there any public comment on resolution 4756? Is there a motion from the commission on resolution 4756?
Make the motion, we pass resolution 4756.
I will second 47.
So there's a motion by Commissioner Friedman, second by Commissioner Schwartz. Any last minute questions, clarification? Roll call, please.
Chairperson Bennett,
Yes?
Commissioner Hopwood,
Yes.
Commissioner Britton.
Yes.
Commissioner Schwartz,
For,
Commissioner Sandberg.
Four.
Motion passes. Our next resolution is resolution number 4755, a resolution of the City Commission of the City of Livingston, Montana, authorizing the city manager to enter into a payback agreement with Brookstone Developing LLC for water improvements in the amount of $204,879 and sewer improvements in the amount of $292,500 for property benefited by the improvements. Mr. Cardew?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First thing I'd like to point out is there's actually there in the title of the resolution. The last number you read, the 292,500. If you look down in the body of the resolution, it's actually 302,394. That's consistent through the body, but the title didn't get updated. So that is 302,394. As to the resolution itself, during the final approval for the Brookstone subdivision, this was one of the issues we talked about, was that the payback agreement was still pending. So this is now the payback agreement that's being brought before you. This is based on a percentage of the additional capacity that the developers built to Brookstone, that most likely in the future, the water will be used for either new subdivisions, or the sewer most likely will be used for new acre subdivision and when it's annexed into the city. So this is based off of 150 additional hookups over the next 15 years, and there will be paid back about 63% of what I possibly paid by extra capacity if all 150 hook up within the 15 years.
Okay. Are the points of clarification from the commission? Commissioner Sandberg?
Does this have to do with the additional development they're seeking for approval tonight?
No.
So this is just the existing?
This is just for Brookstone, which is the one that's just south of Green Acres there. So this is not geographically next to either one of the other subdivisions.
I'm sorry, what I guess I misunderstood you correctly, which you were looking at. So, and then how does the payback work? Each time somebody hooks up, the city pays them back?
Each time that there's a hookup to the system, that one of the qualifying hookups, there's some parameters that they have to meet. But yes, the whoever is being hooked up, the customer at that point will be charged, and then that payback will be sent to the developer.
And do we charge them the exact fee? Do we mark it up?
No, we charge the exact fee. If there's any other cost from the city based on the hookup, that's separate. But this payback fee is charged directly for each hookup.
Okay.
So, Jim's going to clarify what I got.
Actually, there is an administrative fee built into that.
No, that was the $25?
Yes.
And that's per hookup? Okay.
And that's just for us to handle the money.
Thank you.
Any other commission questions, comments, clarification? The only point I want to clarify is under the resolution, it's the 1, 2, 3, 4th whereas. It says whereas 150 additional properties located in the area of Brookstone. Are there actually those properties presently, or we are making an estimate of that there may be those properties in the future?
The properties exist, not necessarily dwellings or buildings exist. So it's basically based off of what is thought to be approximately 150 hookups in the future that would benefit from this. And it's in a specific geographic area that was negotiated with the developer. So
And that doesn't include Green Acres.
it doesn't.
It does include Green Acres. Yes. How many properties are in Green Acres?
65?
About 100 total lots. There's probably 65, 70 homes.
Presently. So the 100 lots would be included in this 150?
May I?
Please.
The agreement itself just envisions the first 100 connections within the time frame allotted. So if Green Acres is first, they would be included. If the trailer park to the south of this development is first, they would be included. At the 150 first would not be required to pay back.
So after 150, when the 151st one comes up, they can connect but not pay back?
Correct. It happens after. If it happens in the first 2 years and the 15-year agreement hasn't expired, the 150 is the max and the 15 years is also a max.
Interesting. Okay. Thank you very much. You're welcome. All right, a couple more questions here. Figure out where I was starting here. Under the payback agreement itself, not the legal resolution, but the payback agreement, paragraph 1. So the developer is stating that the improvements are done in accordance with city requirements, and the city accepts the said improvements. And was there any third party or city administrator or personnel on board to ensure that that was the case?
Yeah, that would be part of the acceptance. And then the acceptance would actually come to you for final approval. So yes. the
We
city-
already accepted it?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, good.
August
Way
1st.
to go. Just testing you guys. Listen. All right. Okay. Paragraph number 5. If for whatever reason the city fails to collect the payback charge, the city shall not be liable to the developer for such failure. Okay, now how did we get that one in there? I mean, if we collect the charge and we fail to give it to the developer, shouldn't we be liable?
It's not that we collected the charge and didn't give it to the developer, it's if we did not collect it from the hookup.
Okay.
So basically, we just go on to the next hookup
Okay.
and it wouldn't count towards the one. So it just accounted for any bookkeeping errors.
In human error?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, number 6, paragraph 6. Failure of the city to recover the payback charge shall neither create a liability on the part of the city nor extend the agreement beyond the period specified therein. So we're kind of covering our bases again for human error. And if we get to 149 or 150 and we forget to collect that one and the 15 years transpires, we don't pay them?
That's
We know how to write a contract, don't we? All right. Okay, then in paragraph 8, the developer hereby agrees to release, identify, defend, and hold the city, its agents, officers, and employees harmless from and against any suit, cause, or action, claims, costs, or expenses, obligation, liability of any character, including the attorney's fee, which may be brought by a third party against the city arising out of the related to the assessment and collection of the payback charge in accordance with this agreement. Then at the end it says this notice shall include a request for a tender of defense from the developer. Can you clarify that a little bit? It looks like what we're saying there is if we make a mistake, we're asking the developer to tender our defense. Am I interpreting that?
there's really no mistake for the city to make in this other than not collecting it. So this is if it arises out of some other issue. If they believe that it's an exorbitant charge or whatever it happens to be. This is just a general legal, hey, we're not going to defend you over this. You're responsible for your own defense. We're just a money pass through at this point.
You meaning the developer?
Yes.
Okay.
And they can't name us as co-defendants in anything.
Okay. Any other points of clarification from the commission? All right, is there any public comment on resolution number 4755? Public comment, resolution 4755? Okay. May we have a motion from the commission on resolution 4755?
I make a motion we pass resolution 4755.
I'll second.
So that is a motion by Commissioner Friedman, a second by Commissioner Hoagland. Roll call, please.
Chairperson Bennett,
Yes.
Commissioner Hoagland,
Yes.
Commissioner Friedman,
Yes.
Commissioner Schwartz,
Or
Commissioner Sandberg,
Four.
Motion passes. Moving on to action items. First action item is discuss, approve, deny preliminary approval of Northtown subdivision. Mr. Cardos?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is the initial conditional approval for the Northtown subdivision. Included in your packet is staff report that answers the Montana code questions that are required, as well as the list of conditional items that we recommend approval on. Under staff recommendations, they are listed under 1 through 11. I can see number 11 was added by the planning board. It's not a staff recommendation, but it was a recommendation by the planning board itself, as well as the pertinent comments from the public hearing held by the planning board on August 16th. Additionally, you can see the plat maps themselves on pages 66 and 67.
Perfect. All right. So, are there any points of clarification from the commission on the preliminary approval of Northtown subdivision? Commissioner Sandberg.
Yeah. I'm just gonna make a vocal statement that, I know we need development, we need housing in this community. I'm not against it in any manner. But what I wanna have is smart development. And I don't think we have our documentation in line to make a smart development. Our impact fees have not been updated. For myself, I'm just learning now that we need to look at our entire sewer system in the city to determine how it will affect the new wastewater treatment plant. And that will not take into account any of these subdivisions because they haven't been built yet. We also do not have additional crossings for traffic designated yet. There were also, in just reading the finding facts for both subdivision proposals here, talking about I don't remember what it was it pertains to as for the titles, but it would state something that the runoff water would not be a problem. And I do believe that I have heard, since I've been on the commission, numerous concerns of current water being able to affect our storm drains just coming out of the subdivision north of the Armory at this time. Can't think of the name of it. So
Vista?
Ridgeview, thank you. And I do remember hearing from the gentleman who manages the Livingston ditch and his concern of the water navigating into that ditch and the flooding that it causes. And I just really think before we move forward with our development, we need to have a plan. We need to understand that plan. I believe it's our responsibility to understand it and not address issues after the fact. I think we need to look at it now. So I personally will not be voting for future subdivisions. I feel that the questions listed by MCA and how they were answered by the staff, myself as a commissioner don't necessarily agree with how they answered them. So I feel I'm in my legal right to vote against it based on the fact that I do think that there will be significant impacts to our community if we don't have a better plan. The other thing that I would like to request as well with the staff recommendations, and I'm not sure who the staff entails, But I would like a legal response on the waiver of SID protests that we keep putting into our subdivision applications that are basically stating that anyone who buys into that subdivision and buys a property can be taxed unlimitedly through a CID for the life of the property. That just doesn't seem legal to me. And I feel that if there are issues, I think I may have alluded to something in reading one of these about using the SIDs to help pay for the additional transportation needed over the tracks. Again, I think all those components should be added into the development of the property. And if that increases the price and inhibits people from wanting to purchase in that development, then apparently the development is overpriced. So I don't believe it's responsible to pass on those future needs unlimitedly to the potential property owners. So thank you.
Are there any other questions, comments, clarifications from the commission? Just have a couple of questions, and I think they pertain to both, but I'll bring them separately. In the staff report, under effects on local services, number A, talking about impact fees. Do you have an estimation of impact fees for this particular development? We do have a specific number of plots for this particular development. And we counted, is that just a multiplication exercise and multiplying impact fees towards number of plots?
It's toward building permits. So
I mean,
impact,
yeah, build towards building permits.
impact fees reflected when the building permits are purchased. So in this case, depending on what the impact fees are at the time the building permits are applied for, that would be, yes, so the multiplication of building permit times the impact fee for that application.
Okay. So with the present impact fees for something like this, do we have any kind of general idea what a range of impact would be for? It's going to depend on, I'm sure, of the housing size and its square footage and all those other factors that go into the size of the lot itself. But is there a general range that we could multiply out there? And I didn't count these up. Do we know how many plots are plotted on this? 53.
It's very simple formula. All single-family residential are a flat fee over the 5 categories that we charge impact fees for, and it adds up to $3,780.
For one building
For each house. Yes.
Right, thank you very much. Well, the only other question I have here is that we need to discuss this a little bit is under effects on local services, item number 4, would new taxes generated from the subdivision cover additional public costs? It says here, in general, it is believed that a residential property does not pay enough through property taxes to cover the cost of services provided. However, with the impact fees, it is much more likely for projects to pay for themselves. So I was always under the impression that the vast majority of our property taxes came from residential. Am I mistaken in that?
You're talking like percentage of overall
Right.
tax revenue?
Tax revenue.
I couldn't tell you the exact percentage. But I think this is referring specifically to single-family residential. Obviously, the larger the areas, the less tax revenue you'll generate. The larger the lots, the less tax revenue you'll generate. So actually, multiplexes, apartment buildings are usually better. Businesses are better property tax generators than single-family development.
it seems like overwhelmingly in our city that we have, where we have about 3,500 properties that we tax. Approximately 35 to 37. And it seems like for that, unless I'm mistaken, we do have our commercial properties in the downtown, so that's different. So can we get a little explanation on why we don't think the residential properties do not pay enough property taxes to cover services? Is that, probably heard this before in years past, but all of a sudden it has occurred to me again when I read it again tonight.
Again, Mr. Cardis's discussion of density makes a big difference. The higher densities, you've got more units per lineal foot of street, per lineal foot of sewer pipe. So higher densities are more economical in that sense. The big difference between residential and commercial is that all the planning studies provided by all the academics show that they draw far fewer services for police, fire, EMS, water department, compared to residential. So while the bulk of our property tax payers are in fact residential, so the higher percentage comes from there, they also use the bulk of the services.
I see. Okay. All right. So the balance is made up is from commercial taxpayers who don't necessarily use the services as abundantly. Correct. Okay. All right. That helps out. Thank you very much. All right. Is there any public comment on action item A? Public comment on preliminary approval of Moretown subdivision? Yes, please come on up and state your name and address for the record and sign in on the notebook there.
I'm Julie Kennedy and I live at 1428 Kennedy Lane, which sits above Ridgeview Trails on the high side, and I've been there for about 27 or 28 years. So I've watched the development of this part of town. And my concern was expressed also at the sort of the planning board meeting, was the traffic that eventually will be directed through Ridgeview Trail subdivision. I'm not sure if those streets and those corners are designed for arterial traffic use, the heavy type use that it would be getting. The traffic gets driven out that direction with a potential overpass or underpass a little further west on Front Street. And I think that's really, really important to look into at this point. Thank you.
You're welcome. Is there any other public comment on? Yes, please come up and state your name and address for the record and sign on in.
Patricia Graybo, 204 East Callender Street in Livingston. I want to just make a couple statements. When I first got on the city commission, there were no impact fees. In fact, I had made the initial proposal for us to charge impact fees. That was way back when, many moons ago. Sadly, I think that one of the things that needs to happen, and I concur with Commissioner Sandberg, is that they They need to be updated, they need to be looked at seriously, there's a lot of things that need to be done. However, my background is, as I've stated before, in economics, a great deal of that in urban planning. And one of the principles of urban planning is that a city like Livingston really does need to grow north. It is just a principle of urban planning. The last thing that Livingston, Montana needs is any kind of strip zoning. And if you take a look at Great Falls and what they did to an unplanned 10th Street, you will see that literally they killed downtown Great Falls. They ended up with a city that was poorly planned, and the plans were poorly implemented. I'm a big fan of moving forward. I was on the commission when we approved Ridgeview subdivision, and the questions that were being asked at that time are the same questions being asked right now. And Ridgeview is a fairly successful subdivision. I believe we have an excellent city manager right now. He is a man who came along and talked to us about an arterial on the Star subdivision, which I thought was an exceptionally smart thing to do. And the kind of planning the planning department has to do, should be doing, is in the area of developing those arterials and doing a master plan on access. That's our department. That's our job. That's the city's job. And I think that the developers on both this subdivision, and I was also on the city commission when we approved the next item under consideration to Discovery Vista. I think that's a well-planned subdivision. I have become a big fan of an overpass coming out where Northern Lights is. And and I'd love to take commissioners, or at least show them what we're talking about as far as arterial access, Northern Lights, extending it out. Weimer, who did the Star subdivision, even less space for the road to, it's highland, the rail's down here, and there's highland. And you would have to create a great deal of fill. You simply created a relatively inexpensive, very good overpass to get people out of the north side from the arterial that was proposed by our, I think, astute city manager. Okay, so my point is this. I understand the concerns of Commissioner Sandberg and had those same concerns when we passed the Ridgeview subdivision. Those were the same articulated concerns. We've spent all this time, 8 years, not getting access from the north side of town. So I think we're putting off something that we should be working with our planning department and really, how can we do this and how can we make it all work? And I am a big fan. I think we have 2 excellent developers. I mean, really excellent developers who are willing to work with the city, and the city really engages, as I think it should, in adequately planning these things and addressing the concerns, for example, Commissioner Sandberg. We should be moving ahead really intelligently to develop that north side of town. It is really important right now in our history. So I just want to underscore the potential we have in our planning department, with the potential we have in our city manager. I think the concerns that exist can be addressed by our professional staff and done well. And stopping this whole process may not be the best answer. The best answer may be a collaborative effort with our staff and the developers. I'm a big fan of this. I think it's time to move and to really get these things going for the well-being of our community. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there any other public comment? Do the developers have anything they'd like to add to the conversation?
You wouldn't mind doing a short recap, that's acceptable.
Absolutely. Yeah, Commissioner Hoagland.
Yeah, a map of the,
We're gonna,
okay,
that's what we're doing.
I want to see the relationship to the
Sure.
community.
Mr. Chairman, city commission members, thank you for the opportunity to again be here tonight, to talk about Ward 10. We had some technical difficulties over there, so Matt is working feverishly to set us up across the aisle.
We're gonna try.
We're gonna try and see what happens. We've been in front of you before, last April, with our proposal for 14 fourplex units in Yorktown. At that time, we received a conditioned approval from the planning department, which is almost exactly the one you have before you tonight. We received unanimous approval from the planning board, and we have that again tonight. This time around, we added an on-site visit for the planning board members, so they can actually come out and see what we're going to do to the property in question. We have dealt with many of the questions that Commissioner Sandberg has raised in the previous presentation. The wastewater treatment, the runoff problem, public safety, special improvement districts, those were all discussed in great detail in the last, our last meeting with you in April. And I'm sure the city manager can speak to this, but all those issues have been covered, and we have not found any issues or problems that would prevent this development from going forward. Special improvement districts are a common form of protection, I guess, for future unknowns in specific neighborhoods. They're used everywhere. They're used in Bozeman, Houston, and Chicago, and almost every city I think ever had that. As you know, Matt and I are seasoned developers. I have a master's degree in public administration and a specialty in urban planning, and I worked in the city suburbs outside Chicago for several years back in the 1980s, way back, I guess. Matt, of course, is an architect. He owns Fort Halverson Architects in Bozeman. Both of us have done multiple, been involved with multiple real estate developments, primarily in Bozeman and Belgrade. And we are here again to present the same concept almost that we did with the apartment buildings, because our goals are the same. Our goals are high quality homes. Our goals include high quality new neighborhood, trails, green space, infrastructure, which the commitment is the same as it was, approximately the same as it was for the last time around. So what's really changed here is we are moved away from looking for the zoning change, which seemed to cause so much concern. And we are asking now for a simple approval for our project with our two zoning in place for single family homes. The homes that we're talking about, I think it's important to note, are, I hate to use the word affordable because it's such a charged word, but they're certainly affordable to a certain segment of the community. We plan on doing small city-sized lots, 4,000, 4,500 square feet. And those houses will, those lots will carry homes in the 900, probably, we don't know quite yet, but probably to the 1,600 square foot range. And we plan on trying to sell these homes in the low 200s, which is where we see the greatest need, and where people who talk to the city see the greatest need. One thing about developers is we do a lot of work analyzing our proposals, because we want to make sure we are doing something where there's a need We don't pretend to know something that we don't know, but we want to go where the need is. We feel the need is for the kinds of housing we're planning on putting up. And the last one is selling. We will have elevations of our own for people to build from. I think Matt's going to be able to show you that in a minute and speak to it. But we also are going to have a homeowner association, architectural restrictions. Matt Stumpy will, of course myself, but primarily Matt will review and approve any architectural changes to the housing. I will go out on a limb and say I believe this will be Livingston's finest neighborhood in a very short period of time. That's the kind of work that we do, and the kind of work we're looking forward to doing here in the city of Livingston. Before Matt jumps in here, I just want to say that last time around we presented you with some letters from local employers, Freedom for Less, Murdoch's, the Livingston Hospital, and those letters spoke to the need for quote unquote affordable housing in the city of Livingston, both rental and homes of all types and all stripes. In the meantime, we put out on our Facebook page, this is really Livingston page, not our Facebook page. We put out a short petition questionnaire for Livingston participants, and there are 11,000 people on there. This is really the Livingston page. And we received about, I don't know if I have them all here, but about 75 or 80 comments from Livingston residents about housing needs in the city. I'm not going to read all 75, but I thought I would throw out a few just to give you the flavor, and I do have copies for you to take a review if you'd like for other decisions that might be made. A few of the comments, I'm just going to read them randomly here. This is responsible growth for Livingston, incorporates the values of why people want to live in Livingston. Livingston needs, another comment, Livingston needs a type of well-planned out and well-funded development that Northtown is trying to bring to town, and we are well-funded. We're ready to go. I work at Praying for Less and feel the need to retain and attract talent to our area. We need more housing options. Also, as students graduate from Park High and find their way, some are interested in staying in Livingston, breaking free from the nest, and need adequate housing to make staying a viable option. Next comment, we need more housing in our town. This seems well thought out. Next comment, as a business owner in this community, we are having trouble even getting applicants for open job positions. I attribute this to the lack of housing and the lack of any available housing. The last one I'll read, are dozens of them. Livingston residents need more access to housing. We are a growing community. Let's be smart about growth and make sure the infrastructure is in place for our community members to succeed. And I know Matt's going to address some of the comments that Commissioner Sandberg made with regard to the drainage and the sewage and the water. So I'm going to stop here and let Matt jump in and walk you through some slides for this commissioner.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Just a quick rundown so you guys are well aware of what we're doing. This is the parcel here, this little triangle that we were looking for a rezone on when we came to the commission before. What's shown here in the gray is what we're proposing for development currently. It's 53 total lots, and we have one larger lot and basically 52 4,000 to 4,500 square foot lots. So this is the totality of the property. This is 132 acres. You kind of see the same outlay as the previous slide was, and then I'll switch on to what is proposed for development here. The lightest green is the portion of property that is not being developed at this current time. You still see that triangular piece across the street. And then in the slightly darker green, You can see what is park space on our subdivision. So coming into Northtown on the right-hand side, there's about 8,000 square feet of parkland, and then along the boundary of that triangular piece, and then extending upward into the subdivision to the north is a linear park, and then you can see right by the entry to Northtown, the second entry to Northtown, which is sort of at the corner of Scenic View and Ninth Street, is another group of parkland spaces. Throughout those parkland spaces are also park trails that are leading up into the subdivision and will eventually be tied to the remainder of the trails within the subdivision. Now, something to note, these lots are on the smaller side, but the minimum allowed in the city of Livingston is 3,500 square feet. And so we're up above that minimum, and we're doing that very intentionally. I think we talked a little bit before, and I think it was mentioned that, you know, smaller lots take less resources, less extensions of sewer and water mains. And the reality of the situation is a little bit smaller lot is the way to get more affordable housing. When we develop housing on 8,000 square foot, 10,000 square foot lots, we get one house on 10,000 square feet where we could really get probably 2 homes in that same amount of square footage. Also, this subdivision is very, very similar, and I'll enlarge it a little bit just so it's easier to see. It's very, very similar in scale to what the older portions of Livingston are already doing, right? So the 3,500 square foot lot, the smaller footprint, the little bit higher density on the lot, that's what we're looking for in this development. So all of the homes are accessible by alleys. That's another thing that Livingston's pushing for. We think it's a good idea. We like the idea of the alley load. Frees up the front of the street for sidewalk and on-street parking. And also our concept relative to homes that are going to be developed in here is more about a pedestrian connection. So we want to have front porches. We want to encourage people to walk. We already have Livingston minimum front yard setbacks of 25 feet. So that's really where all your public space is in your lot, is in the front. And it's designed that way, and it was asked for it to be that way, and we're really just responding to that. Okay, so we have a 25-foot front yard, 5-foot rear, 5-foot sides, and we're complying with this. And I'll show you kind of a site plan of what a typical lot layout might look like. But as we look at that, I want you guys to understand we're shooting for smaller square footage footprint homes. And if you want to increase the density, there's no reason you can't go down, do a full basement, and there's no reason you can't go up and do a second level as well. Now, there's a height limitation at 27 feet, so we don't want to get out of control, but it'd be very easy to put a second story or a story and a half, as they sometimes like to refer to them. And that's sort of the look that we're after, is that smaller home, that craftsman look, just like we see throughout Livingston and the older sections of Livingston. So that's really what we're shooting for. I'm going to give you some examples of what this looks like in terms of lots. You can see what would potentially be a home. In the back of that home is an alley. So what's gray on the left-hand side of the screen is an alleyway. Then you have the 5-foot setback. No, other side, left-hand side of the screen.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, over here. Then you have your garage at the back, and in this particular slide, we have a. I'll blow this up a little bit just so it's easier to see for everybody. This is about a 1,335 square foot main floor footprint. Okay, and then this is about a 480 square foot garage. Of course, we have garage parking, we have on-street parking. This shows your sidewalk at the front of your house. This shows the boulevard, which is a little bit bigger because Livingston actually asked for a little bit wider street. So you see the strip of green that becomes the boulevard for boulevard trees. You see the sidewalk, you see the front yard setback, you see the front porch, and then you see the potential development of the house. Now, all the rest of that green space around where you see those property lines, that's open space, right? And the next house next to you has the exact same requirements. So in essence, we're gonna have 10 feet of green space through each one of these lots, right? Because you can only build to 5 feet from your property line. And all along the streetway, we're gonna have 25 feet of setback, right? And then we're gonna have a sidewalk, and then we're gonna have a larger boulevard. So our intention is to continue with the boulevard tree methodology that is pretty much throughout Livingston. We would love to put those trees in and see the growth of those trees. And so it's just a little difficult to do before you develop, and while you're developing, you kind of have to have water as a resource in order to get those trees going. So as part of our HOA, we are requiring the boulevard trees be planted as well. So we'll eventually have a canopy that looks a lot like the rest of Livingston's development. I guess I might have missed my other one here. Where is it? Oh, here we go. So here's another example. This is a little bit smaller home. This would be 1,120 square foot, again with the garage tacked onto the back and alley loaded. But you can see the space for green space and or backyard lawn type area. We also envision that some homes might be built without a garage to begin with, just like a lot of homes throughout Livingston are built without garages, and then a garage can be added in the future. And again, those are methodologies to assist us in controlling costs for affordable housing, if that makes sense. So these are just a couple examples of how we can do. The look we're after is very similar, again, to a lot of the homes you're seeing throughout Livingston. The craftsman look with the porch on the front. We want to encourage pedestrian traffic. We want to encourage boulevards. We want to encourage people loading their homes and garages from the back, which is why we're all on board with the alley theory. And in essence, it's just 53 lots that are going to follow that pattern with our HOA documentation and our architectural restrictions and covenants. 52 lots, plus we have a remainder lot as well, and that's this lot, which is lot 1 in the top corner. That lot was a suggestion in working with the planning department to give us some flexibility to do either different types of development, the possibility of some higher density residential development internal to our subdivision. So in all likelihood, lot 1 would be, we would come back to the planning board and the commission for a concept to develop that lot. But as working with the planning board, we felt that to develop that lot and leave us the ability to do that, but to already have it platted versus going in and having to plat it and then talk about changing development or changing requirements for that lot. So that's sort of the plan for the whole subdivision. This is about 26 acres out of our whole pie. So we've got much more property to come. We've also got that parcel across the street, which we're debating what to do with in terms of that development. But one of the issues that we've talked about is perhaps doing a very similar development to this across the street. And interesting to note that if you kind of look down at how the city has developed, no, it's just kind of going all over here, but bear with me. You see the density that's developed in areas throughout the city with the alleys and the main roads, and a lot of people have come in and built additional residences on lots and broke lots down and have done 2 residences on lots and or broken lots into 2 pieces to 3,500 square feet. And so that's really the kind of density that we're envisioning for Northtown. It's just really an extension of the north side of Livingston, as it were. Now, to address a few of the issues relative to drainage and water and sewer infrastructure. Again, all these requirements have to meet the city of Livingston standards. We have to comply with DEQ regulations. We have to prove all this through a process of engineering, okay? Now, is it the perfect process of engineering? Do we know every pitfall that Livingston is ever gonna deal with? Absolutely not. But what we do know is what our subdivision is gonna deal with, and what the city manager has been working on, and the public works director has been working on, is understanding a whole system, so we can tie our systems in with the whole system and be working in conjunction to get the best possible system, right? We're not gonna be able to solve every single problem, but we're working together to solve the problem, okay? Now, in terms of drainage and that sort of infrastructure, again, the same rules apply. We are not allowed by the city to be dumping water into the city's system. So we have to figure out a way to contain all that on site with engineers, doing studies, calculating, making sure we understand conditions like frozen ground, spring thaws, all the rest of those types of things. But we have a lot of land up there, right? We have the wherewithal. We've talked to the city about it. We want to work to solve the problem. Are we going to be the only person that needs to solve the problem? No. We're 132 acres. There's water coming down from above us. There's water coming down from other places in the city. So again, it becomes one of those things that we really have to work conjunctively to start solving the problems of runoff, water, waste, all the rest of those things. They have a solution. It just takes us a little while to get there, and it takes us professionals working on it. Our traffic and our traffic infrastructure are going to meet all of the city of Livingston standards again. We're putting in sidewalks, we're putting in oversized capacity for sewers, we're putting in extensions of roadways to connect with future developments. So we're doing everything we can, and we're working conjunctively with the city to make sure we get the best possible development that we can get. And in addition, we're not coming in asking for a bunch of variances. We're looking to do exactly what the city of Livingston has said they want done with development. So with that, I'll wrap it up and open it up for any other discussion.
Thank you very much. Commission questions, clarification, comments? Mr. Hoagland.
You referred to a linear park as part of the plan, and is that part of your dedicated parkland?
I didn't hear the first part of your.
You referred to a linear park.
Yeah.
As part of the plan. Is that part of the dedicated parkland?
Correct.
And how many feet, acres, whatever of dedicated?
There's currently a little over 2 acres that are being dedicated, but of course the plan is to extend the linear park along with the power infrastructure that currently goes through the site. And we plan to tie that into the existing trail, Bitterroot Trail, that's to our south. And you guys probably know, people pull over at that corner all the time and use that property for dog walking and all the rest of that stuff. And we'd like to continue to see that. We'd like to encourage it, but we'd like it to be on a trail system that's built throughout the subdivision. It's just going to take some steps to develop. And in addition, we have that, it's about 8,000 square feet right there where you come into the subdivision. There's a little, kind of a little wedge-shaped piece. That's going to be dedicated parkland as well.
So is it big enough for people to play on it, kids to play, or is it more of just a visual?
The entry probably not big enough for people to play. It's sort of an entry theory, plus it's just a small sliver of property that would be difficult to develop, so we intend to use it as green space. But the rest of the parkland, absolutely. 50 foot wide and wider in spots. Like where you enter into our subdivision, you can see those, there's several lots inside of there that are dedicated parkland with a trail system running through them as well.
And then you said about kind of an average of 1,300 square feet or foot house?
footprint, correct.
And how many bedrooms is that?
In 1,300 square foot, you could do 3 bedrooms. But again, that 1,300 is just the ground floor footprint. That doesn't say anything about developing down or up. So a 1,300 square foot footprint could become a 2,600 square foot house with a full basement.
So the $200,000 selling price would be just that 1,300 square foot.
If we develop the homes, that would be, our intention is to develop the lots and to sell lots to build homes. But we're going to put together architectural restrictions. And what we wanted to show you is kind of the intention of what we're looking for. Somebody might want to build a 1.5 story plus a full basement and press the market to 275. Somebody might want to build 1,300 square foot and be right at the bottom of the market. And our intention is to allow development to happen kind of in those phases as we look through downtown Livingston and other homes in this neck of the woods. We see multiple residences with, second floors, second stories, full basements. And we see a lot of development that's going on in other areas of Livingston where people are splitting lots and doing units down on lower levels and all sorts of things. Now, we're planning on single family only in this subdivision. So just to make that clear, but exactly what gets built is a little bit beyond our scope, other than we can tell you kind of the maximum height, maximum this, can't go past the setback. And by the way, we're going to also indicate what we intend for people to build by a series of elevations and floor plans, just as an ideology for a builder to set the tone of the subdivision. And we're going to do design review, right? So if you want to come in here and build a tract home, we're not going to allow it. We're going to require gingerbread. We're going to require front porches. We're going to require some of those little community things that that I believe are necessary to create a well-designed community.
That's all.
Any other questions from the commission?
Who maintains the boulevard trees? The owner?
Yes.
We're going to have a homeowner association to control a number of things, including maintenance of the property.
But ultimately, the homeowner is responsible for the boulevard trees. Now, in bigger municipalities, they have street and tree maintenance divisions, forestry, that will come in and monitor and maintain and cut down diseased trees. And Livingston is not there yet, so we will have an HOA essentially that helps with the maintenance of those things, if owners aren't doing it themselves.
Any other questions?
No, thank you.
Any other questions from the commission at all? Commissioner Sandberg?
I think I mentioned this before. Have we communicated with the schools and to look at these plans and if school buses can maneuver up there? I know when Ridgeview Trails was put in, the school district was not consulted and it ended up in streets that were not, the school buses could not make the corners.
Yes.
I met with the school board facilities committee and we reviewed the project, not for that purpose, but they did see what our plan was and I heard no objection to that.
So you didn't discuss it specifically?
Not specifically, no.
Okay.
But they did see it. I showed it to them.
Did you ask for their input on it for school buses? I mean, was that a topic on the table when you were talking?
No, the agenda was their agenda, not mine.
Okay.
They asked me to tell them about it, and I did.
Okay. I just want to make clear that it wasn't discussed with the school buses.
Is there any public comment? Any other public insight comment? Any presentation? Yeah, one question. So, in my understanding of your presentation, you're gonna develop the infrastructure, the lot size, and sell the lots to developers, but you're gonna have architectural parameters in which they have to build within. And is part of that the setback, porches, the garage always being in the back, that type of thing?
Correct.
Okay.
Some of that is really driven by the city. So the zoning ordinance that's in place for R2 development requires us to meet 25-foot front yard setbacks, 5-foot side yard, and 5-foot rear setbacks. So that's already kind of yeah, and that's kind of a document that's already written. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to add basically to that to say, these are the things that we want to see, not only by describing them, but by showing pictures of them in the document. So any builder or even ourselves, if we decide to build a house, say for instance, we know the tone that should be built in this subdivision.
And the parameters you'll set basically leave no doubt as far as the kind of architectural theme through the community. Is that what I'm hearing?
I would like to do a document that will no doubt. What we try to do is we try to establish a good guideline, right? We also want to leave the door open for creativity, okay? Because I don't think just one person's idea is the right way to go about it. There might be other ideas, right? There might be ideas that fit within the confines of the overall ideology of the development. And if they do, then they would be approvable. But they would still have to meet the setbacks, the overall height, and the tenor of our architectural restrictions.
We've been using the word restrictions, but probably a better word is guidelines. Architectural guidelines.
Okay. I know within the city itself, when we look at the boulevards within the city, it sounds like with homeowners association, there's a kind of a different flavor to it in that the homeowners association will help guide that process. So I know that in the city, you can drive down the streets and you see a variety of care in the boulevards. Some are just immaculate, and some are just, burnt bare because there's been no care to it. In the infrastructure that you put in, I know that one of the things that we've had to overcome in the city, one of the hurdles is we'll go to the boulevard, pull out a tree, plant brand new trees, and someone will say, well, I'm not watering those trees, and they'll just die. So is there a provision in your homeowners association that there'll be sprinkler systems that will automatically, add water to those areas so they can thrive?
Yeah, exactly. Required maintenance. If you don't do it yourself, then the HOA can come in and do it for you and charge you for it and make an assessment against it. It's just a more localized control system than having the police come up and say, you gotta mow your lawn.
Right.
It's an HOA that says, these are the requirements, these are the expectations when you buy in here. If you purchase in this subdivision, then this is what is required. You have to maintain your property.
But I think if you want to eventually come up with a canopy, there's going to have to be enough water to support that. And, if you kind of have those in your guidelines, then you're going to, be successful at that.
Yeah, the entire lot needs to be irrigated. We have a caliper size in mind for our boulevard trees, so we start out headed in the right direction.
Right.
And the guidelines are only as good as the enforcement. Just a little short story. Matt and I did a development once where the people building the house did not follow the guidelines in terms of the building height. Matt and I went up to the house, knocked on the door, and told them to take the roof down. And they did. Otherwise, we would have been taken to court. So we will be enforcing these guidelines as we go along. We're not absentee developers.
Very much. Is there any other questions from the commission? Any other public comment? Yes, ma'am.
I do have a question.
Well, you have to come up to the
And it's just a
table and
concern.
announce your name and address for the record and go ahead and sign that.
My name is Dawn French, and I live on Meriwether Drive, up in the northwest end of Livingston. And as we're talking about this development, my concern is a lot of people have 2 cars, plus an RV, plus a boat, something of that's kind of setup. Looking at this, concern is the alleys where you're gonna have your cars parked, can it accommodate cars on both sides as well as having room for an emergency vehicle to be able to go down the middle of the alley? Just throwing it out there.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know anywhere where you can clog the alley, so to speak. And so it's a good point. Recreational vehicles, that type of stuff, a lot like the subdivision I live in. You know, you got a recreational vehicle, you got to figure out where to park it, and it can't be on your property, right? Because your neighbors don't want to look at your recreational vehicle, and if you do park it on your property, it has to be appropriately screened. Just like garbage cans and all the rest of that stuff, we want to put these in a set of control documents from the HOA that says this is what the expectation of this subdivision is. Don't buy in here if you're not buying into those things, right? I personally like it. I don't like people parking RVs on the street. You know, occasionally, I think our subdivision document is written that says, 7 days. So if a friend shows up in an RV, they can sure park on the front and visit your house. But after that, they gotta go. You can't leave an RV parked permanently at your place unless it's screened. These would have the ability, if you wanted to lose all of your backyard, you could park an RV in there and screen it. Same thing could be said for snowmobiles, snowmobile trailers, drift boats, RV, all of that falls into that category. And I personally don't want it in this subdivision. We don't want to see it. You can put it in your garage, you're fine. You screen it from view, you're fine. But I don't want to park on the street, and I don't want to park in the alley, and we're going to write our restrictions, so that's not allowed.
Is there any other public comment, questions, clarification? Great. All right. Gentlemen, thank you very much for the presentation. Really appreciate it. So, all right, is there a motion from the commission to preliminary approve of Northtown subdivision?
I make a motion that we approve preliminary approval of Northtown subdivision.
Okay, excuse me, no, I apologize. There's another question.
This is for the city. So one of my concerns with development is, especially on the north side, is access. So how we currently have kind of a zigzaggy kind of way of getting to the north side, in and out. Have we begun, or have you, as the city manager or working with the planning, begun dealing with and thinking through that? And I know it's a concern of a lot of people because it's hard to get from point A to B. And I don't mean just an underpass or an overpass or an arterial road, but how do we get people moving into all these new areas?
The easy answer is yes. We have looked at it, we are addressing it. There's several ways you have to look at it. The current approach we're taking is dilution, i.e. make as many possible entrances and exits as possible. So people going west go one direction, people going east go a different direction, people going downtown go a different direction. So you spread the traffic out over as many roads as possible.
That's a significant infrastructure undertaking. It's gonna take an extension of Front Street, it's gonna take a new underpass, probably take development of Meredith Branch Road, probably take an improvement of Fleshman Creek Road, probably take an addition of a road from Fleshman Creek Road near the armory up to the plateau where Northtown, soccer fields, Ridgeview trails exist. So there are ways to do it. None of them are cheap. So it's a significant amount of capital that has to be invested to create that traffic infrastructure, but it is possible. It just depends on which traffic loads we need to address first.
So, second part of the question. I don't want to put you on the spot too much, but are you comfortable with, multiple developments and growth, which is where it's all going, really, at this point, a little bit out east, but are you comfortable with adding a lot of people to a place that still has a lot of access problems?
I think we're on a good timeline because of the phases and the time of development. None of this development is going to happen overnight. We're in a preliminary phase yet. We're not even final approval. So we have time to start building some of that infrastructure. Obviously, that infrastructure build out is not certain. But as far as basic services go, even if we did no improvements, it could handle the development that we're currently talking about. As far as EMS services go, it's no different to get to Northtown than it is to currently to Ridgeview Trails. It's the same. Traffic may be more congested, i.e. you may have to wait 10 or 15 minutes versus 5. But that is a function of development no matter where you are. We can look to alleviate that, but there wouldn't be anything that was dangerous and or unsupportable with the current development proposals.
Commissioner Sandberg?
I would just like to have the commission think, though, that if we delayed development until we had a better plan, when we talk about this access that the city manager discusses, which they have looked into, we have to think about how we're going to pay for it. And our debt at this point is fairly high. And I don't think our current debt capacity that we have left could finance an additional crossing at the overpass or for the other side of the city. So if we had updated impact fees that took into account impacts to traffic, which these new properties would contribute, and they were paying fees for that, that would definitely help to pay for that additional crossing, one or plural, in the future. But by just building and allowing this development now, it's going to be the entire city who's going to have to pay for the development of a few. So I just think that it's better to have the folks that are making the impact pay for the impact, which is my argument for updating our impact fees before we continue on with more development.
Point of clarification. Impact fees SID is not the SID that's referenced in our staff report. Serves the same function as a collection vehicle for transportation, future transportation needs.
Serves a similar function. There are some differences between an SID and impact fees. Mainly an SID would be able to include a larger area, i.e. if you're worried about a road up to Ridgeview Trails, you could include Ridgeview Trails in the SID. So it wouldn't be just the new development, it would be the current development that also contributes to that traffic flow. Likewise, if you're going to do an SID for an extension of Front Street that would take into account Discovery Vista 1B, you could also take into account Discovery Vista 1A, Northern Lions and any new development that came out there. So the SID gives you a little more flexibility in who contributes to that type of financing fee. Impact fees are only going to be building permits, so it's only people that are building in the future. It doesn't include any of the current residents that might use the same infrastructure.
Thinking about those together, if for instance, we had a impact fee for new developments that included an impact for transportation, with the idea of arterial roads or underpasses, overpasses in the future, legally, can you create an impact fee and someone pays that, and then also on top of that, place an SID?
You can, because impact fees are not going to fund the entire project. That would just be it'd be impossible to develop anything at that point. If you actually laid the entire cost on only the future development, the impact fees would be incredibly high. So this would be, SIDs are usually used in a different manner. Impact fees give you a cash reserve that you can spend. SIDs are usually to service debt that you would borrow against. So you would borrow against an extension underpass project, and then part or all of that debt service would be covered with an SID that lasts 20 years.
So the idea of of major arterial infrastructure enhancements to the city of Livingston, an SID would be a preferable function.
I would say at least it would be a portion of it. In general, when you're talking a major infrastructure project like that, it's going to be a combination. It's going to be impact fees plus an SID, possibly plus funding just from the streets, water, sewer funds themselves as part of that. And you could even do an entire mill levy depending on the size of the project. So an SID would almost certainly be a portion of that. Really would come down to breaking out how much each type would cover.
I'm just also thinking out loud here. So in the case of the type of infrastructure we're discussing here and having a plan for it, would we not probably include the entire city in the SID?
You probably wouldn't include the entire SID, but that's where a mill levy would come in. So a mill levy would cover the entire city, and you could do a portion of that to cover the debt over the same time period. So a mill levy would cover a portion, and SID more focused on those that are actually directly benefiting from it instead of tangentially or secondarily benefiting from it. And then the impact fees that reflected from the development that would happen. So those would be the three main ones. Citywide, specific to people that are going to use that infrastructure, and then the impact fees themselves from the development.
And then in the case of timing, as far as new developments and the developments we're looking at tonight, and impact fees, let's say a development started, no building permits have been issued, or maybe a few have, and the commission makes adjustment to impact fees. It would be from that point on, not retroactive, I'm assuming. So, for instance, these two developments we're looking at, I'm just using an example because they're right before us tonight. They get 20 parcels permitted, and then a future commission approves an additional impact fee regarding transportation. Anything from that point on, even within those particular subdivisions we're reviewing, would then have that impact fee attached to them.
That's
Okay, so does anyone else want to say anything? All right. Now, do we have a motion from the commission on preliminary approval for Northtown subdivision?
Yes, I make a motion, we approve preliminary approval of Northtown subdivision.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay. Motion by Commissioner Freeman, second by Commissioner Schwartz. Roll call, please.
Chairperson Bennett,
Yes?
Commissioner Holbrook,
Yes.
Commissioner Clinton,
Yes.
Commissioner Schwartz,
Four.
Commissioner Sandberg,
Against.
Motion passes. All right. Thank you very much for your time and attention on that one. We're going on to action item A, discuss approve deny preliminary approval of Discovery Vista Phase 1B. Mr. Carduce.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is very similar to what we just did. The only additional item that you take note of in this particular approval is that while this is the initial or preliminary conditional approval, it also contains 2 variance requests. Both were recommended to be approved through the staff study. The first one being a roadway width of 36 feet instead of 38 feet, and the second being cul-de-sac radius of 38 feet instead of 40 feet. Those requests originate basically from the initial design of the development itself. The development was designed prior to 2009, and those were the requirements at the time. Current Discovery Vista 1A has those widths for its streets, so the request is just to maintain uniformity throughout the development itself. We did discuss that with the EMS services. We had the chief go out fire truck and check the turning radius and the cul-de-sac to make sure that that was within parameters. It is. There shouldn't be any difficulty. It would also be the current width that the streets are there. There's no current difficulty with the streets in Discovery Vista 1 Alpha. So while any new development would have to meet the new standards, since this was originally designed as part of a 2-phase project, we recommend the approval of the variance by 2 feet to the street and cul-de-sac radius.
Thank you very much. All right. Commission discussion, questions, clarification? Any public comment? Preliminary approval of Discovery Vista Phase 1B. Public comment? Commission comments? Motion from the commission? Is there a motion from the commission?
Yeah, I make a motion to approve preliminary approval of Discovery Vista Phase 1B.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
So there's a motion by Commissioner Friedman, second by Commissioner Hoagland. Before we have roll call, is there any last minute questions, clarification? Public? Commission. Roll call, please.
Chairperson Bennett,
Yes?
Commissioner Hoagland,
Yes.
Commissioner Friedman.
Yes.
Commissioner Schwartz,
For.
Commissioner Sandberg.
Against.
Motion passes. Action item C, discuss approve deny schedule meeting with the urban renewal agency. Mr. Carter, do you have a date for us at this point?
I have arranged dates. Actually, what I have is dates that don't work for URA.
Okay.
Ideally, the 17th through the 19th are absolutely, there will not be enough URA members available. However, 19th through the 24th, there will be enough, but not all the URA available. And the dates outside of that, they have full availability currently.
Co-chair, Mr. Hoagland, I have to make a phone call to you. Take over. Thank you very much.
So, any dates work or don't work for commissioners based on that?
What were the dates that were more favorable for URA? Most of them could attend.
Anything prior to the, anything after the 19th, most could attend, and anything after the 24th, right now, all could attend.
Okay, thank you. I'm open.
So just for reference, the next commission meeting is on the 19th.
Yeah.
So if you wanted to stick to a Thursday, the 21st would be available for most, or we could do 26th would probably be okay. 28th would be all right, except most of this, well, some of the staff is going to be out of town for the Montana League of Cities and Towns Conference, 27th, 28th, and 29th also.
So the time on the 26th, operations.
So it looks like 21st or to push it into October.
I vote for the 21st.
21st, the 21st is my birthday. That's a good time.
We'll bring cake.
Just another one now.
We can meet at the shop house, you can take care of it.
We'll bring you something.
All right, I will work with the URA schedule on 21st. What time would you guys?
I can't make it before 5:30.
I like the 5:30 time. That works.
21st.
Does 5:30 work
We'll
okay
check
for you?
with James.
It's not too tight.
I can.
Oh, okay.
How many
5:30
hours?
works for me.
I don't see it taking more than an hour and a half.
So 5:30. Sarah, would you rather have 6?
No, 5:30 is fine. Unless Mo wants to eat beforehand. What do you want to do, Mo?
I give them a snack.
I can do 5:30 or after, anytime.
You like that date?
Okay, yeah, at this point, get it from the discussion.
So Wednesday, easy?
It would have to be the 20th, because the folks will be out the next Wednesday. Or the, it smells out the 26th.
You only have one birthday a year.
And this is a big one,
You're not gonna have to anymore.
big numbers.
According 59.
That's Molly.
When you're discussing the majority of, are we talking the executive group?
Mainly it's Bob and Carla and
Joe?
And Joe.
So-
The only one not available after the 19th is Bob.
Okay, schedule that for
19th, yeah. What about the 25th, on Monday? Would you be here, Mel? The 25th, it's a Monday?
25th would be,
Because Tuesday you've got big really, right?
yeah, I would do leave town on the 26th.
Looking at either Monday, the 25th, or sort of that Wednesday or Thursday, the 20th or 21st. But it's Mel's birthday on the 21st.
Well, we could celebrate.
Well, he said we could have the meeting, but we just got to take them out.
The 25th would work for me, that Monday, if that works
I can
better for
work.
people.
For me.
25th would be okay.
And if it's on Monday, I could meet at 5,
That works for me.
because I'm in town on Mondays.
5 o'clock.
I can make that work.
We're fine too.
Ms. Grable, you have something in reference to
May
setting?
I ask a question?
Yes. So,
Specifically, what is the purpose of the meeting with URA?
yes.
This is a scheduled working session with URA, so it's going to cover a few topics.
What specifically?
Well, it's going to cover a minimum current financial statements, projected costs for the next several years, as well as options for the URA to, the TIF to extend beyond its current sunset date.
Because it is it's such a popular program in downtown Livingston, it is so appreciated. That board, by the way, is a remarkable board. I would love to have it arranged so that a lot of the downtown businesses could be here for that meeting as well. It affects them. One of the most remarkable things this town did was the URA, get the URA going, take a look at its impact on their lives.
If I may, Patricia, we can cut to the chase as an open public meeting.
Okay, so then it would be helpful if we brought petitions and businesses to the meeting and so forth in support of continuing the URA as it is. Is that correct?
Whatever's,
Whatever.
it's an open public meeting and
Okay.
there'll be opportunity for people to comment.
Okay, could I please, if I could, I'll just stop by the office and pick up a list of the things that would be discussed at this meeting so that we can go door to door with all the businesses downtown and talk it over with them.
Yeah, there isn't currently an agenda, but it'll be developed prior to the meeting.
Well, I'd like to be able to discuss, for example, sunsetting is a really important issue for our businesses, so I'd like to be able to take that to all the businesses, if I could.
Well, you have a date and time, which is September 25th at 5 o'clock.
I was just thinking because, I'm just wondering, should we make it 5:30 so, business owners, it might be easier for them to be able to attend? 5 might be,
That's fine with me. Can everyone make 5:30?
On Monday, 25th.
Monday, the 25th, 5:30.
Great. Thank you so much for answering my question, appreciate it.
You're very welcome. Thank you very much. Okay, so action item D, request from Spray Neuter Clinic for waiver of rental fees on October 7th and 8th, 2017. Mr. Cardis?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is a request from the Spay and Neuter Clinic for the waiver of the rental fees. This is their annual,
Well, we do it 2 times a year.
semi-annual.
Yeah.
Semi-annual clinic for people to bring their pets in and have them spayed or neutered at no cost. And this particular one, it is at the Civic Center, and the standard fee is $120. This has historically been waived for the events, so this is recommended by the administration and falls in line with our support of the Spay and Neuter Clinic.
Okay, any questions, comments, clarification from the commission? We have a motion from the commission.
Yeah, I make a motion, we approve the request for Spay Neuter Clinic waiver of rental fee October 7th and 8th.
I'll second.
So motion by Commissioner Freeman, commission by second. Here we go. Let me start that again. Motion by Commissioner Freeman, second by Commissioner Hoagland. Any public comment? Of course not. Roll call, please.
Chairperson Bennett,
Yes.
Commissioner Hoagland.
Yes.
Commissioner
Yes.
Reagan, Commissioner Schwartz,
4.
Commissioner Sandberg.
Four. Motion passes. All right. City manager comments.
The city manager by policy yields any comments after 2 hours.
Okay. Good policy. All right. Commissioner Sandberg.
will we be receiving any type of update from the URA on the bathrooms, or can we request that be an agenda item?
That will be on.
Okay. And then the other question I have is in regards to the Historic Preservation District, and I don't know who to talk to in regards to that, but the new sign next to the salon there on the corner of Calendar and Main, thank you. I've had a lot of comments from people of how that passed through the Historic Preservation Society as a legitimate sign. It's a rather large wooden stop sign on the corner there. And so what, I guess through that, I receive a lot of concerns from people saying that, oh, Jim is here. I thought you had left. Why those things are not getting enforced. I think there's some buildings downtown that don't have appropriate windows, and it seems, and I don't know any facts, it's all hearsay, so I'll state that from here out, except I did see the sign and questioning how that did go through the Historic Preservation Society or Preservation District Board. And that there don't seem to be recourse for people who don't follow the current laws. So can we somehow get some clarification, or can somebody point me to who I need to talk to on, it seems that the city side is not enforcing, it's not the committee itself. And so how do I find out answers to these questions?
I will get you answers to those questions.
Cool.
Can I add something to that?
I was gonna also say, Quentin was on, do you have anything to add to that?
No, I think Jim will agree, we just had no teeth, really, to.
There's not a lot, but I'll provide all the information.
Yeah.
We'll make it comprehensive and.
I know we've discussed it, gone back to owners trying to get them to comply.
But so basically we have nothing in the statute.
Yeah, it's almost like we no teeth there or something. Something's missing.
we'll get it back
Yeah.
together and discuss.
It's been too long since I've been on there, but I know it was a frustration with the historic preservation board that we couldn't force it.
Which then I'd like to add to what you're saying. We really, I think as a commission, have talked about the ordinance enforcement discussion, so that we need to add that to an agenda. I don't know if we do that as a work session, but dealing with ordinances and kind of thinking forward so that some of these issues that are brought to us as frustrations can be answered, I guess. So do we have a plan as to when that may be, that we can discuss ordinances and ordinance enforcement and the teeth behind these issues?
I would say we're looking at several ordinance enforcement's a pretty wide.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a huge scope. That encompasses parking, signs. Dogs,
sweepers.
Dogs, street sweepers. It's a pretty big thing. Right now, we're currently doing the research on the signs. One of the biggest problems with enforcement is consistency. If you look across, there's some that you can obviously say, okay, that one doesn't meet current code. But if you apply that standard across all signs, I think you'd have a significant community complaint. Because it's going to affect places like Marks and other areas that you have waiver systems. Because this is currently stated that you have to repair a sign that isn't compliant with that sign no longer be used. So we're trying to actually track down at what point do you lose a grandfathered exemption? Is it an ownership change? Is it a sign change? Is it a sign repair? Is it a sign replacement? Because it affects, to be able to enforce that consistently citywide is not as simple as it sounds. And so we're trying to make sure that what the ordinance says is what we want it to say before we start just enforcing non-uniform, because that just opens us up for some liability.
You think by October we could have deeper discussion on this?
If we want to scope it down to signs, yes. I don't know if we could have it on all ordinances, but yes, if we want to scope it down to signs, I think that would be October. Does that sound good, Jim? October.
You have the floor, Commissioner Sandberg.
Yeah, and I guess, maybe with the historic preservation, it sounds as though perhaps maybe there are no ordinances, there's just suggestions, and maybe that's part of the problem. But also then I wanted to remind the commission that we had on our schedule to do mission statement and strategic planning in the next few months. And so I think at our next meeting, we need to discuss getting those topics on the calendar.
I actually have a meeting scheduled with the MSU local governments guys that did the strategic plan with the county to see what they have available and what they could offer, and that's an option we can look at.
Right. Thank you.
Commissioner Schwartz.
I probably had something, but I have nothing, so no, I yield.
Commissioner Friedman.
I'm good. Good meeting. Thank you.
I have only one quick thing.
Mr. Holman.
Could we add to our calendar the Parks and Trail Committee's dates and time? Because I know we put the planning board.
Yeah, on the calendar events, yeah.
But on ours here, it's remember it's the fourth Wednesday at 6.
I'll make sure I get it.
All right. Sounds like it's meeting schedule time, and we are due for another meeting that we should set a date for. But we can put it on for an action item next commission meeting, I guess. It's up to the commission, but according to our contract with the city manager, we're at a 6-month period. So if there's a second, we should put on the action item for setting up a date for that evaluation. Commissioner Sen?
Can we also add into it the structure and what an agenda and a structure? I mean, it seems sometimes with some meetings we get together and we're kind of deciding what we're doing once we get there. But if we could have, I'm not sure you guys have been through this process before, but if we have a structure that we use, that we could have that in advance, so we know what the questions are going to be, how it's going to be conducted, what to expect at the meeting.
Okay. So we'll put that on the action item and establish a structure.
And a tool,
Now what?
and a tool for the,
For evaluation.
which we have.
Yeah. You want to bring it?
Can we get that in advance?
I'll give it email
I
to,
thought I saw something like that.
I'll get it email. Send it out.
So there was a second by Commissioner Holman, so we'll have that on and set that date. All right, is there any public comment at the end of the meeting? If you haven't, come on up. Don't be bashful.
You may be talking to the least bashful person. I wanted to make compliment the commission and our city manager on the meeting tonight. But I want to also bring up something that the community has been working on, different people in the community. And that is, and I've mentioned it before, I don't know what the status of the Livingston, is it rehab? The monies. Restoration. Has that been looked into at all further to come up with the monies from the Livingston Restoration Group to pay for some still of the work on the water treatment plant? I talked about it during public comment.
From what I understand of the Livingston Restoration Group, that money is set aside specifically for the claimants, and the city has already used the money that they had as claimants based on the property that we had within the affected area. So the actual damages allotted to the city have already been remitted to the city, and so there's probably no further monetary reimbursement from the Livingston Restoration Group.
Okay, and I personally will question that, not question you, but having voted for that to start with and following that very closely over a long period of time, I will go back and do further research on this, because that's not the intention. And I will work primarily with EBQ on that. The other thing is, I don't know if you're familiar with Future West organization. It might be interesting for the commission to Google Future West. Dennis Blick is the head of Future West. It's a remarkable economic development kind of organization here, headquartered in Bozeman, but Dennis lives in town. There's been communication on partnering with the Commonwealth about economic development for our shops now that they have been mitigated. And sadly, when we did bring a group in from China, you were there, Commissioner Bennett, we were unprepared for a presentation. I don't think anybody had previewed the situation with the shops, had really created an excellent presentation in which you could actually sell to this Chinese company that was considering making trains in our shops. So they sent an emissary up from Australia to look at our shops, to tour our shops, and to look them over on behalf of a Chinese company. It would be a boon to Livingston to develop those shops in partnering with the city and and MRL to develop industry within that those shops. A lot of things have been considered, including blades for wind energy and so forth. Dennis is very interested in this subject, and as am I. So I just think it's something that this commission can put in the back of its mind, consider. If really, when we talk about economic development, that is a remarkable, it's but 1/8 of the actual land in our city. It's right there. We weren't able to do it before because it had not been mitigated. The parsonages and they're mitigated now. So I think it'd be cool best this commission to take a look at Future West, begin some conversations with them about the kind of partnering that the city could do with MRL in developing high-paying jobs in our shops. So just want to bring that up to the commission.
One point of clarification, has Mr. Glick contacted MRL and discussed what the parameters they will allow in there?
No, he and I have mostly been talking.
You might benefit by getting that information before.
Oh, yeah. He would. Oh, he would.
Because I know that when we visited there, they intimated they had specific requirements of the type of business they would work with, because they wanted to be something that coincides with the type of work they do as well.
And that's absolutely essential.
Yeah.
So
anyway,
and that's the kind of professional preparation that has to go into the kind of presentation that you attended. That should have been all done with MRL and knowing exactly what they wanted. All that research should have been done ahead of time before anybody ever entered the shops and began those discussions. And that's what I'm saying.
Might also contact Rob Gilmore, because he set up that whole situation. So.
And I have. And Rob and I were, actually, I engaged Rob to bring the man just flying out from Australia.
Okay,
But Dennis is an excellent resource in this particular situation. Really, he would do his homework.
Thank you very much. Any other public comment? All right, I entertain a motion for adjournment. So moved. For a second.
Aye.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right. This meeting of the Livingston City Commission is adjourned at 8:49.
More practice taking stuff.
That's my job.